Just because you have authority does not make you a great leader.
So talk a little bit about, what you learned, good leadership characteristics that, really were imprinted on you that you wanted to take away from your military experience.
The leadership one is the most important thing. I think when people hear the term leadership, they think of like the boss, and that's not what it means. Like Henry VIII is a great example of someone who was in charge, but certainly not a good leader, right?
Yes.
Terrible leader.
Yes.
Joseph Stalin is another great example of someone who was a horrifically bad leader, poor leader, but had a ton of authority. Just because you have authority does not make you a great leader.
Boom.
A great example of a terrific leader. A lot of people wouldn't realize this. Mother Teresa is a great example of a terrific leader. Somebody who's willing to serve to the point that she encouraged other people to serve. Mahatma Gandhi is another example of a great leader. Another example would be Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King had less authority than the president of the United States, but was probably a better leader than Lyndon Johnson. If you were to look at, and I think Lyndon Johnson would agree with that as well.
Yeah.
So leadership also has to do with followership. One of the great examples I would highly recommend anyone who wants to learn about leadership. There's several books, but a couple of my favorite ones is the Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, The Dichotomy of Leadership, also by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. The other book that I would read is called The Gates of Fire, and this book is about King Leonidas and taking on the Middle Eastern army of King Xerxes II, or King Xerxes I, in 482 BC, I believe. This is the Battle of Thermopylae. The movie 300 was about this battle. And one of the things he says is that the difference between Xerxes and Leonidas is that if Leonidas wants to go to war, he's the first one into battle. He's the first one there with his troops. When something needs to be built or something needs to be done, King Leonidas is the first one to pick up a hammer. That's what a true leader is. King Xerxes allowed his troops, his slaves, to just go and fight for him on his behalf. And that's why they eventually lost and Greek remained a free country, was because Xerxes had a bunch of slaves that were poorly trained and poorly motivated fighting for him. And Xerxes had a bunch of Spartans that were gladly willing to give their life in order to protect their homeland. And so that's a great example of what good leadership looks like versus bad leadership. The book Gates of Fire is also like a required reading for U.S. Marine Corps officers. And that's the reason why. So I think that's the main thing. And then the other thing, what does that mean? So direct communication versus passive aggressive communication. Can I give you critical criticism with understand that I'm not actually trying to attack you? Like last night is a great example. We had a girl on there who believes in astrology. And I tried to explain to her, like, she's like, you live in a world of reason, and I lived in a world of possibilities. And I'm like, no, I live in a world of possibilities, and we both live in a world of reason. Regardless of whether or not you agree with it, again, it's the speed of light is 300,000 kilometers per second. The speed of light is still that speed, whether or not humans are on the earth to perceive that speed. And the speed of light would exist whether or not you feel like it's 300,000 kilometers per second or not. She's like, well, we can't measure things that go on in other galaxies. And I'm like, yeah, we can. You can get a PhD in cosmology. You legitimately can measure other galaxies using things like parallax, red and blue shifting, spectroscopy, and using the speed of light in order to determine things. You definitely can. And we know the uniformity of the universe based, or the uniformity of this galaxy and other galaxies based on things like gravity and nuclear fusion and et cetera. And she's like, she just waved her hand away, like, no, we don't know any of this. And I'm like, yeah, we do. Like this one group of people were willing to do the work.
Yes.
And you aren't. That doesn't negate them because you believe in astrology. That doesn't negate astronomers. And that was very difficult for her to understand. And that's the problem. Like one of the reasons why I'll bring it up. This happens to be a very attractive woman who got a job, and she has a job based on her physical appearance. And because of that, she has the privilege of being able to believe in nonsense and get away with it. Whereas me as a man, I don't have that privilege. I run a business where I have people working for me. I don't have the privilege of being like, hey guys, I'm not sure what, marketing campaign we should do. Let's look at our horoscopes. I don't have the privilege of being that ignorant. Right. And so because I'm a man, and when you see, it's like orders of magnitude more women believe in astrology than men. That's the reason why. This is not to say women are worse. It's just sometimes when people, by the way, you know what else you'll find is that like people like Kyrie Irving believe in flat earth or believe that, the Holocaust didn't happen. Why does he do that? Because from a very young age, he knew he was going to be a first round draft pick in the NBA. He knew that. He played like 11 games at Duke and then got drafted to the NBA. He always believed that he was special, and no one told him no because he had the nastiest crossover in the NBA. And so because of that, he had the privilege of being able to believe in nonsense. And so that's what happens. those of us who don't have that privilege because we have to work hard, we don't get to believe in nonsense. And we don't even have time to go down the nonsense of like aliens built the pyramids, reptiles live under Antarctica, the earth is flat, etc. We don't believe in these things because, again, like it's really funny. She goes into this argument about, well, the reason why there's wars is because men run countries. And I'm like, the reason why there's wars is because some people conduct violence and other people have to stop that violence with violence.
Right.
It was not rational for Germany to invade France. It really wasn't rational. They didn't have the population to withhold that country. What was rational, however, was the UK and the United States storming Normandy in order to save France. That was rational. It was not rational for Germany to invade. It was not rational for Germany to invade Russia in the winter because Napoleon had previously done it and had the same results. They died. What was rational was for Joseph Stalin to then try to have those people try to fight against them, and poorly, I might add. They lost 25 million people in Russia defeating the Nazis. But like, the point is rationality and whether or not, like, people don't understand violence is not a one-sided thing. Violence only happens because other people are willing to do violence. It is not rational. I'll say this, and I get a lot of hate for this. It was not rational for Vladimir Putin to invade the Ukraine. It was rational, however, for Ukraine to defend themselves. And so that's the thing. Like, a lot of people are like, well, no, men are the problem. Like, no, not men are the problem. People with mental disorders are the problem. 25 nations in this country are run by women. Like, it's not this idea that it's just men that are doing this. Utterly nonsense. One of the most hawkish political leaders that we've ever had was Margaret, the Prime Minister of the UK, the Iron Lady. I can't remember her name right now, and I apologize. Back in the 80s, she was a hawk. She was she was very pro-military. So I don't know. It's just one of these things where some people have the ability to not live in reality. But the reason why you have the ability to not live in that reality, why you can be so comfortable with your opinions and protest these things, is because other men were willing to do violence on your behalf.
Correct.
There are bad men out there. And the reason why those bad men can't get to you is because the United States has even badder men.
Yeah.
But our bad men have things like stealth aircraft, night vision goggles, sniper rifles. That we have things like fucking submarines and aircraft carrier groups. That's the reason why our bad men can cancel out those bad men. And that's the reason why this is the safest time in history.